the charm that blinds you. They say when something feels too good to be true, it usually is. But when you first meet a narcissist, you don't believe that. How could you? In the beginning, everything feels so perfect, so effortless, so magical. It's like stepping into a dream you never want to wake up from. Imagine someone looking at you like you're the most fascinating person in the room. Their eyes linger on you as though you hold all the answers to the universe. They laugh at your jokes, even the bad ones. They lean in close when you talk, hanging on to every word like your voice is music. For the first time in a long time, you feel seen. Not just noticed, seen. They don't just compliment your appearance, they study you. They remember your favorite color, the way you take your coffee, the exact story you told about your childhood. And when they repeat it back to you later, you're stunned. You think, wow, they really care. They really pay attention. They move fast. They talk about fate, about destiny, about how meeting you feels like the universe aligned just right. They might say, I feel like I've known you forever, or, you're different from anyone I've ever met. And a part of you wants to believe them, because who doesn't want to feel like they're one in a million? It's intoxicating, that early stage. The world feels brighter. Songs sound sweeter. Even the air feels lighter when they're around. You catch yourself smiling at nothing, replaying their words in your mind, texting them late into the night, your heart racing when you see their name light up your phone. This stage has a name, love bombing. But you don't know that yet. You just think you've finally found someone who values you, cherishes you, who sees your worth in a way others didn't. They shower you with attention. Constant texts, long calls, surprise gifts, endless flattery. You think this is what love is supposed to be. And maybe in those early weeks you even tell your friends, I've never felt this way before. I think this is it. But what you don't know is that every smile, every compliment, every carefully chosen gesture is part of a mask. They're studying you not out of love but out of strategy. Every detail they collect about you will later become a tool. Every secret you share will later be twisted. Every weakness you confess will later be used as a weapon. Still, you don't see it. Not yet. You're lost in the glow. One night, you're sitting together, maybe in a quiet restaurant or maybe just on the couch at home. They reach for your hand and tell you, I've never met anyone like you before. You make me want to be better. Your heart swells at those words. You think, finally, someone who wants me as much as I want them. And in that moment, you let your guard down. You don't notice how fast they've moved. How quickly they've gone from stranger to soulmate. How easily they've slipped into the cracks of your life, filling every empty space with themselves. You don't notice the small ways they're testing your boundaries, like asking about your past relationships with an edge of jealousy, or wanting to know where you are every moment of the day, framed as concern, not control. It feels flattering, not frightening. Feels like love, not a trap. That's the brilliance of the beginning. It's a performance, carefully scripted, perfectly acted, designed to make you feel chosen, adored, indispensable. They aren't showing you who they really are. They're showing you who they know you want them to be. And it works. Of course it works. Because you're human. You want love. You want connection. You want to believe that someone could finally, truly, completely see you. But soon you'll learn that with a narcissist, being seen is not the same as being loved. Being adored is not the same as being valued. And what feels like the beginning of forever is only the first step into a carefully woven web. For now, though, you're blissfully unaware. For now, you're falling deeper, faster, harder. For now, you're certain you've found something rare. And maybe, in a way, you have. Rare, yes. Precious? No. You just don't know it yet. The change doesn't happen overnight. That's the most dangerous part. If it did, you'd see it clearly. You'd notice the sharp edges, the cruelty, the control. But narcissists know better. They know how to make the shift so gradual, so subtle, that by the time you realize what's happening, you're already too deep inside their web to escape easily. It begins with little things. Small remarks. Offhand comments that sting but not enough to make you leave. They disguise them as jokes. You're really going to wear that? They might say with a smirk, laughing like it's harmless. You're so emotional, they'll sigh as though your feelings are just an inconvenience. You brush it off. Everyone makes jokes. Everyone gets irritated. And besides, you remember how wonderful they were at the beginning. You tell yourself they didn't mean it that way. You tell yourself it's not worth starting a fight. But the jokes continue. The sighs grow heavier. The criticisms grow sharper. And slowly, without realizing it, you start to change. One morning you stand in front of the mirror, hesitating over what to wear. You hear their voice in your head, mocking, teasing. So you change your clothes. Not because you want to, but because you don't want the comment. You don't want the argument. You don't want the look that tells you you've disappointed them. That's how it starts. It's not just what you wear. It's what you say. You stop sharing certain opinions because you've noticed how they react when you disagree. The way their face hardens. The way they shut down the conversation. The way they punish you with silence until you apologize for daring to have your own thoughts. So you learn to keep quiet. To nod along. To agree even when you don't. You tell yourself it's compromise. You tell yourself it's normal in relationships. You tell yourself it's love. But compromise is mutual. This isn't compromise, it's control. At first, the control is subtle. They frame it as concern. I just don't want you to get hurt. I don't think those people are good for you. I'm only saying this because I love you. And how do you argue with that? They love you. They're just trying to protect you. That's what you tell yourself. That's what you believe. But slowly their concern becomes rules. Rules about who you see, where you go, how you act. Rules about how quickly you respond to their messages, how often you spend time together, how much of yourself belongs to them. At first you resist. You push back. But resistance leads to arguments, and arguments lead to punishment. Maybe it's yelling. Maybe it's the silent treatment. Maybe it's a storm of accusations that leave you questioning your own memory. Whatever form it takes, it teaches you one thing. It's easier to give in than to fight. So you give in. Again and again. Until giving in becomes a habit. Until it feels like the only way to survive. And all the while, they remind you of the beginning. They remind you of the love, the affection, the promises. Why can't things be like they used to? They ask as if you're the one who changed, as if you're the one who ruined the magic. You don't realize it yet, but this is part of the cycle. The cycle that will keep you trapped for far too long. Because every time you think about leaving, every time you think about pulling away, they bring back a piece of the beginning. They smile the way they used to. They compliment you again. They take you out, hold your hand, kiss your forehead, and whisper, "I love you, don't you see that?" And for a moment, you believe it. For a moment, you feel safe again. For a moment, you think maybe it was just a rough patch, maybe you were overreacting, maybe you can get back to how it used to be. But it never lasts. The sweetness always fades. The compliments always turn back into criticism. The warmth always turns back into coldness. And each time it happens, you lose a little more of yourself. You stop noticing the ways you're shrinking. The way your laughter isn't as loud. The way your opinions are softer, safer, less likely to spark conflict. The way you hesitate before speaking, calculating whether your words will cause an argument. You stop noticing because survival doesn't leave much room for noticing. You're too busy managing their moods, tiptoeing around their triggers, trying to keep the peace in a war you never asked to fight. And that's how the shift happens. Not in a single moment. Not in a sudden explosion. But in a slow erosion of your spirit, day by day, word by word, sigh by sigh. Until one day you wake up and realize the person you were at the beginning, the confident, hopeful, vibrant version of yourself, has been buried under layers of doubt, fear, and silence. But by then it feels too late. By then you can't remember where the mask ended and the real person began. By then you're convinced that maybe the problem isn't them. Maybe the problem is you. And that's exactly how they want it. There comes a point in the cycle where control alone is not enough. Where silence, criticism, and rules don't satisfy their hunger. And that's when something far more dangerous enters the picture. Gaslighting. It doesn't begin with a blatant lie. No. Narcissists are too skilled, too strategic for that. It begins with the smallest distortions, the tiniest shifts in reality, so subtle that you question whether you imagined it. You remember something one way but they insist it happened another. They raise their voice at you, sharp and cold, but when you mention it later they laugh. I wasn't yelling. You're exaggerating. You recall a promise they made, plans for tomorrow, a commitment to help, but when you bring it up, their expression hardens. I never said that. You must be confused. At first you're certain. You know what you heard. You know what happened. But their confidence rattles you. They say it so calmly, so firmly, as though the truth lives only in their version. And slowly doubt creeps in. Maybe I did remember it wrong. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe it's me. And that's exactly the point. Because the more you question yourself, the less you question them. Soon it becomes a pattern. Every time you try to hold them accountable, they twist the narrative. They turn themselves into the victim, and somehow, you end up apologizing for their mistakes. They cancel plans? It's your fault for having expectations. They insult you? It's your fault for being too sensitive. They flirt with someone else? It's your fault for being paranoid and insecure. No matter what happens, the blame shifts. The guilt slides onto your shoulders, heavy and suffocating. And the worst part is, you start to carry it willingly. You start to believe them. You start to think maybe you really are too emotional. Maybe you really do expect too much. Maybe you really are the problem. And once that seed is planted, it grows. It grows in silence. It grows in sleepless nights. It grows every time you replay a conversation in your head, wondering if you're losing your mind. Gaslighting is like standing in front of a mirror and watching your reflection blur. Watching the outline of who you are dissolve, until you're not sure what's real anymore. Until you're not sure what's you and what's them. Sometimes you try to resist. Sometimes you cling to your memory, your truth. No, you insist. I know what you said. I remember what happened. But resistance only fuels their fire. They roll their eyes. They sigh, exasperated. They accuse you of being dramatic, crazy, unstable. And that word, crazy, cuts deeper than any insult. Because it makes you doubt not just your memory but your very mind. It makes you question whether your thoughts, your feelings, your reality can be trusted at all. And once you stop trusting yourself, who do you turn to? Always them. The very person who breaks you is the one you lean on for clarity, for validation, for truth. And they love that. They thrive on it. Because the less certain you are of yourself, the more power they have over you. Sometimes, though, you see glimpses of the truth. Moments where their mask slips. Moments where the cruelty is too sharp, too obvious to deny. They mock you in front of others. They dismiss your tears with a cold laugh. They twist your words until you feel like you're choking on them. And in those moments, anger flickers inside you. A tiny spark of resistance. A whisper that says, this isn't right. This isn't love. But before the spark can catch fire, they switch again. They soften their voice, they reach for your hand, they say, you're imagining things. I love you. I would never hurt you. And you're caught. Caught between the cruelty and the comfort, between the lies and the longing. Because what if they're right? What if you really are imagining it? What if the problem really is you? That's the hook. That's the poison. That's the trap. Gaslighting doesn't just break your heart. It breaks your mind. It erases your certainty, blurs your reality, leaves you stranded in a fog where up feels like down and wrong feels like right. And by the time you realize what's happening, you're already lost inside it. Already doubting your own reflection. Already convinced that without them, you wouldn't even know who you are. And that is exactly how they want it. If gaslighting is the fog that clouds your vision, the cycle is the storm that keeps you trapped. It doesn't move in a straight line. It doesn't progress logically. It loops. It repeats. It circles back on itself until you can't tell where the beginning ends and where the end begins. One moment they're cruel. Sharp words, cold silence, explosive anger. You feel small, worthless, unloved. And then, just as you're starting to question everything, just as you're beginning to wonder if you should leave, they switch. The smile returns. The warmth reappears. The tenderness you've been starving for suddenly flows back into your life like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. And it's intoxicating. Because after days or weeks or even just hours of rejection, the smallest gesture of kindness feels enormous. A compliment, a touch, a soft laugh, a whispered, I love you. It's enough to make you forget the cruelty at least for a while. It's enough to make you hope again. And hope, that's what keeps you there. Hope that the person from the beginning still exists. Hope that the love you felt wasn't just a trick. Hope that if you can just do the right thing, say the right words, be the right person, you'll get back to that perfect beginning. But here's the truth, that beginning was never real. It was a mask. And the cycle is the proof. Because the sweetness never lasts. The compliments never stay. The warmth always fades. And the cruelty always returns, sharper, colder, heavier than before. It becomes a rhythm you know by heart. First, the criticism. The disappointment. The blame. Then the withdrawal. The silence. The coldness that freezes you out. And finally, the return. The apology that isn't really an apology. The affection that feels like a reward. The reminder of how good things can be. Over and over again. Until your mind and body adjust to it. Until you're conditioned, like someone reaching for a light that flickers unpredictably, never knowing when it will shine again but desperate for the glow. Psychologists call it intermittent reinforcement. You don't get rewarded every time. You don't get punished every time. The unpredictability is what makes it powerful. It's what makes it addictive. And that's what this cycle is. An addiction. You crave their approval the way an addict craves a fix. You chase after scraps of love, believing they mean something more. You cling to the rare good days because they convince you the bad ones are just temporary. But the good days don't erase the bad ones. They only make the bad ones harder to leave. Sometimes you notice the shift in your own behavior. You hear yourself apologizing for things you didn't do. You catch yourself justifying their cruelty to your friends. You feel the way your body tenses when you hear their footsteps, your stomach dropping as you try to predict which version of them you'll get today, the lover or the tyrant. You see it for a second. You think this isn't normal. This isn't healthy. But then they smile at you again, or they brush your hair from your face, or they hold you the way they did in the beginning, and the doubt melts. And the cycle begins again. Criticism. Silence. Affection. Withdrawal. Return. Reward. Round and round until you lose track of time. Until days blur into weeks and weeks blur into months. Until you don't just live in the cycle, you breathe it. You dream it. You survive it. And somewhere along the way you forget what real love even looks like. Because this is all you know now. And that's how they keep you. Not with constant cruelty. Not with endless sweetness. But with the dizzying, unpredictable, intoxicating swing between the two. Enough pain to break you, enough kindness to make you stay. That is the cycle. And it is relentless. Every cycle has its limits. Even the strongest heart can only take so much before it begins to crack. Even the most resilient spirit can only bend so far before it starts to break. But with a narcissist, the breaking point doesn't come in one dramatic moment. It creeps in slowly like water wearing down stone. You don't notice the cracks at first. You don't notice how hollow you're becoming. Until one day you catch a glimpse of yourself and realize you don't recognize the person staring back. It starts with exhaustion. Not the kind that sleep can fix, but the kind that sinks into your bones. You're tired of fighting. Tired of defending yourself. Tired of walking on eggshells, measuring every word, every gesture, every breath. You're tired of the silence that punishes you. You're tired of the arguments that twist your words into weapons. You're tired of apologizing for wounds you didn't cause. So you stop. Not all at once, but little by little. You stop speaking up. You stop sharing your thoughts. You stop expecting kindness. You shrink into the safest version of yourself. The one that causes the least resistance, the least conflict, the least pain. And in the process you disappear. The person you used to be, the one who laughed loudly, who dreamed boldly, who spoke freely, becomes a shadow. You don't wear the clothes you love anymore. You don't spend time with the friends who once filled your life with joy. You don't chase the passions that once set your soul on fire. Because somewhere along the way you learned that being yourself is dangerous. Being yourself leads to criticism. Being yourself leads to punishment. Being yourself leads to war. And so, you trade pieces of yourself for peace. You sacrifice freedom for survival. But survival is not living. Survival is existing. And existing feels like drowning. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, you wonder how you got here. You think back to the beginning, to the sweetness, the passion, the promises. And you ask yourself, was that ever real? Or was it always a lie? But the thought is too painful to hold, so you bury it. You tell yourself the story they want you to believe, that you're the problem, that you're too sensitive, too difficult, too needy. You convince yourself that if you could just change enough, love enough, forgive enough, things would go back to how they once were. And so, the cycle continues. Until one day, quietly, unexpectedly, you break. It doesn't look like shattering glass. It doesn't look like screaming or rage. It looks like numbness. It looks like sitting in a room with them yelling, and realizing you don't feel anything anymore. It looks like staring at their face while they hurl accusations, and feeling as though you're floating outside your body, detached, hollow. Because sometimes the breaking point isn't explosive. Sometimes the breaking point is silence. It's the moment you realize you've run out of fight. It's the moment you realize you've run out of tears. It's the moment you realize you've become a stranger to yourself. And yet, even here, even in the numbness, even at your breaking point, you don't always leave. Because leaving isn't simple. Leaving means untangling yourself from the web they've spun around you. Leaving means facing the fear they planted in you, the fear that you're nothing without them. So you stay. At least for now. Broken but still bound. And that's the cruelty of it. The breaking point doesn't always free you. Sometimes, it chains you tighter. Because when you no longer trust your voice, your heart, your memory, what do you have left to guide you out? Nothing. And that's exactly how they want it. Awakening doesn't arrive with trumpets. It doesn't come as a sudden epiphany where everything makes sense all at once. No. Awakening begins quietly, almost invisibly, in the smallest cracks of the darkness. It might come in a conversation with a friend. Someone who notices how your laugh sounds different, thinner, like it's been drained of joy. They tilt their head, look at you carefully, and say, "Are you okay?" And in that moment, your throat tightens. You want to answer, but the words won't come. Because you don't know anymore. Are you okay? You don't even remember what okay feels like. Or maybe it comes when you're alone. You scroll through old photos, pictures of yourself before them. You see the brightness in your eyes, the confidence in your smile, the way you carried yourself without hesitation. And for just a second you realize, I don't look like that anymore. I don't feel like that anymore. Sometimes the awakening comes through contrast. You watch another couple in a cafe, laughing freely, disagreeing without fear, touching each other gently without tension. And you wonder, is that what love is supposed to look like? Awakening doesn't mean you leave right away. Often you don't. Because the chains are still there, the gaslighting, the control, the cycle of cruelty and kindness. But even the smallest flicker of awareness is dangerous to them. Because once you begin to question, once you begin to see the cracks in the mask, you can't completely unsee them. At first, you try to silence the awakening. You tell yourself you're imagining things. You remind yourself of the good moments, the apologies, the tenderness that occasionally breaks through. You scold yourself, why am I doubting them? Why am I being ungrateful? But the truth lingers, stubborn, unshakable. Like a splinter lodged under the skin, no matter how you try to ignore it, you can still feel it. And slowly, quietly, you start to test reality. You speak up just a little. You disagree softly, cautiously. And when they explode, when they twist your words, when they punish you again, something inside of you whispers, see? It's not you. It's them. You begin to notice the patterns. The way their affection always returns right when you're about to give up. The way their apologies are never really apologies, just manipulations to reset the cycle. The way their words don't match their actions. And with every pattern you recognize, another thread of their power over you begins to loosen. But awakening isn't just about seeing them clearly, it's about seeing yourself again. Maybe you try something small. Wearing the shirt you love even though they once mocked it. Texting an old friend even though they told you not to. Taking a walk alone, breathing air that doesn't feel heavy with their presence. And in those moments you feel it, the faint echo of the person you used to be. The one who laughed without permission. The one who dreamed without fear. The one who believed she was enough. The feeling is fleeting. It doesn't last. Because they still sense it. They sense when you're pulling away, when you're slipping from their grip. And they tighten their hold. The cycle intensifies. The gaslighting sharpens. The control grows stricter. But even then, even under their weight, you can't completely bury what you now know. You've seen a glimpse of truth. You've felt a flicker of freedom. And no matter how faint, no matter how fragile, the awakening has begun. You may not be ready to leave. Not yet. But deep inside, something has shifted. A seed has been planted. A quiet voice has awakened. And though they will try to silence it, though they will try to smother it, that voice will not disappear. Because once you begin to wake up, you can never truly go back to sleep. Breaking does not always mean the end. Sometimes, breaking is what makes the light finally slip through the cracks. For so long, you've been living in the fog, twisting yourself into shapes that no longer fit, convincing yourself that their cruelty was love, that their control was care. You've been surviving on scraps, addicted to the cycle, losing yourself piece by piece. But something changes. Quietly. Softly. Almost imperceptibly. Maybe it's a look in the mirror one morning when you barely recognize the eyes staring back. Maybe it's a friend's concerned voice on the other end of the phone, asking if you're really okay. Maybe it's nothing more than the exhaustion settling so deep in your bones that you whisper to yourself, I can't do this anymore. Whatever the spark is, it ignites something inside of you. A flicker of clarity. A whisper of truth that's been buried for too long. And it says this is not love. The thought terrifies you. Because if this isn't love, then what was all of it for? The sacrifices, the apologies, the countless nights spent trying to be enough? If this isn't love, then you've been living in a lie. But as painful as the realization is, it's also liberating. Because if this isn't love, then maybe, just maybe, you deserve more. The clarity doesn't come all at once. It drifts in slowly like sunlight filtering through heavy curtains. One moment you're still doubting yourself, still questioning your own mind. The next you see it, sharp, undeniable, the truth of their manipulation, their control, their cruelty. You notice how every apology comes with a condition. You notice how every I love you is tangled in blame. You notice how the good moments are never free, they always cost you something. And for the first time you allow yourself to call it what it is. Abuse. The word tastes foreign in your mouth. Heavy. Dangerous. You hesitate to claim it because it feels too harsh, too final. And yet, deep down, you know it fits. Because love does not strip you down to nothing. Love does not silence you. Love does not make you doubt your own reflection. Love builds. Love heals. Love frees. And what you've been living through is none of those things. The awakening doesn't make you leave, not yet. But it shifts something inside you. It plants a seed. You start to imagine a life beyond them, even if it's only in fleeting daydreams. You catch yourself wondering what it would feel like to laugh again, freely, without fear. To speak without hesitation. To walk into a room without calculating every move. You start to remember who you were before them. The version of yourself that was vibrant, hopeful, alive. And though that person feels distant, buried under layers of doubt and fear, you realize she's not gone. She's still inside you waiting. And for the first time in a long time, you feel something you thought you'd lost forever. Hope. It's fragile, almost fragile enough to break. But it's there. And once hope enters, the fog can never fully cover it again. This is the beginning of the end. Not of you, but of their hold on you. Because awakening is not just seeing the truth. Awakening is remembering that you deserve better. Awakening is whispering to yourself, I'm still here. I'm still me. I'm not gone. And once you awaken, even slightly, you can never fully go back to sleep. Leaving a narcissist isn't like walking out of any other relationship. It's not as simple as packing a bag, closing a door, and never looking back. If only it were that easy. No. Escaping a narcissist is more like breaking out of a cage you didn't even know you were trapped in until the bars were already around you. And once you see the cage, once you realize what it is, you also realize how tightly it's locked. Because by now they've built the prison from the inside out. They've convinced you that you're too weak to survive without them. They've isolated you from friends and family, cutting off the lifelines that could pull you out. They've twisted your memories, blurred your reality, and made you doubt your own strength. So when the idea of leaving first crosses your mind, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like failure. Feels like betrayal. Feels like stepping into the unknown with no safety net. But still, something inside of you pushes. A whisper. A spark. A truth that refuses to die. I can't live like this anymore. At first, escape doesn't look like leaving. It looks like preparation. Quiet, hidden preparation. It looks like tucking away small bits of yourself they tried to erase. It looks like saving tiny amounts of money in places they won't find. It looks like reaching out, cautiously, to one trusted friend, testing the waters of support. It looks like imagining, just imagining, a life outside of the cycle. A life where you breathe freely, laugh loudly, move without permission. And the more you imagine it, the more you begin to believe it could be possible. But the danger grows with the preparation. Because they can sense it. Narcissists always can. They feel when their grip is loosening, and they tighten it with everything they have. Suddenly, the cycle intensifies. The criticism is sharper, the punishment's harsher, the apologies sweeter, the love-bombing desperate. They pull out every weapon, every tactic to keep you from slipping away. And for a while it works. You fall back into the rhythm, lulled by their promises, trapped by your own hope. You tell yourself, maybe I don't need to leave. Maybe things can change. But deep down you know the truth. Nothing will change. Not really. And so, one day, it happens. Maybe it's quiet. You pack a bag while they're gone, your hands trembling as you shove clothes into the zipper. You slip out the door, heart pounding, every step feeling like it might be your last if they catch you. Or maybe it's loud. Maybe it happens after one final fight, one last explosion where their mask drops completely. And something inside of you snaps. The fear, the doubt, the guilt, it all crumbles, and in its place rises something stronger. Resolve. Either way, the moment comes. The escape. Your body shakes. Your mind races. You don't know if you're strong enough, if you'll survive without them. But your feet keep moving. Away from the cage. Away from the storm. Towards something uncertain but yours. And that first breath of air, away from them, away from their control, it doesn't feel free yet. Not fully. Feels terrifying. Empty. Lonely. But underneath the fear there's something else. Something you haven't felt in a long, long time. Possibility. Because for the first time, your life is yours again. Fragile, fractured, messy, but yours. And that is the beginning of true escape. They don't tell you what happens after you leave. People think escape is the end of the story, the triumphant finale, the curtain closing on the nightmare. They imagine you walking away with your head high, reclaiming your life, smiling with relief. But the truth is different. The truth is quieter, darker, and far more complicated. Because when you leave a narcissist, the world doesn't suddenly become light and easy. When you leave, the silence is deafening. When you leave, the cage might be gone, but the scars remain. At first, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like withdrawal. Like an addict cut off from a drug that poisoned them, yet kept them alive. You wake up and instinctively reach for your phone, waiting for their messages, the ones that used to dictate your every mood. But the phone stays still. Silent. And the silence feels unbearable. You find yourself questioning everything. Was it really that bad? Did you exaggerate? Were you the problem all along? These thoughts aren't random. They're the remnants of the gaslighting, echoes of the manipulation, the lingering whispers of their voice inside your head. You don't just walk away from years of programming without consequence. And then comes the grief. Yes, grief. Because even though they hurt you, even though they broke you, there's still a part of you that misses them. You don't miss the cruelty, but you miss the person they pretended to be. You miss the warmth of the beginning, the dream they sold you, the illusion of love that once felt so real. That grief is heavy. It drags at your chest, confuses your mind, makes you wonder if leaving was a mistake. And that's when the narcissist often comes back. They sense your loneliness, your vulnerability, and they pounce. The late-night texts. The sudden apologies. The promises that things will be different this time. They beg, they plead, they charm, all to pull you back into the cycle. And some days it's tempting. Some days the emptiness feels worse than the abuse. Some days you think maybe it would be easier to go back just so you don't have to feel this lost anymore. But deep down you know the truth, going back doesn't heal you. Going back only resets the cycle. So instead you sit with the pain. You let the silence settle. You let yourself cry for the love you thought you had, for the years you can't get back, for the version of yourself that was dimmed. And slowly, very slowly you begin to rebuild. It starts small. One laugh that feels real again. One night of sleep without nightmares. One conversation with a friend where you don't feel like you're walking on eggshells. And over time you realize something. The absence of their chaos is not emptiness. It's space. Space for you to rediscover who you are. Space for healing. Space for joy to grow again. The aftermath isn't easy. It's messy and painful and filled with moments of doubt. But it's also where the real transformation begins. Because surviving the narcissist wasn't the end of your story. It was the beginning of your return to yourself. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't come in a single moment of clarity or one grand decision to move on. Healing is slower than that. Quieter. More fragile. It begins in tiny fragments. Pieces of yourself you thought were gone forever. At first, you don't even notice it happening. You're too used to survival mode, too used to the echoes of their voice in your mind. But then one day something shifts. Maybe it's when you laugh, really laugh, for the first time in months. Not the nervous laugh you used to use to keep the peace, not the forced laugh you gave to please them, but a laugh that bursts out of you, unplanned, unstoppable. And in that moment you realize, I'm still in here. I'm still me. Healing looks like that. Small, unexpected victories. It looks like wearing an outfit without wondering what they'd say. It looks like eating a meal without hearing their criticism in your head. It looks like walking into a room and not shrinking yourself to make someone else comfortable. At first it feels foreign, unnatural, like you're learning to live all over again. Because in many ways you are. You start to relearn trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your choices, trust that your voice has value. You start to set boundaries, shaky at first but stronger each time you practice. You start to remember the things you loved before them, the passions they mocked, the hobbies they dismissed. And little by little you begin to reclaim them. But healing isn't only about joy. It's also about pain, the kind you can't avoid, the kind you must face head-on. Because the wounds they left behind don't close on their own. They need tending. They need time. They need gentleness. So some days healing looks like crying in your car, wondering if you'll ever feel whole again. Some nights healing looks like fighting the urge to text them, reminding yourself of all the reasons you left. Some mornings healing looks like dragging yourself out of bed even when the weight of it all feels too heavy. And that's okay. That's part of it. Because healing isn't about being perfect. It's about being patient. It's about allowing yourself to feel everything, the grief, the anger, the relief, the hope, without judgment. Slowly you begin to realize that the voice in your head, the one that doubted you, mocked you, minimized you, was never yours. It was theirs. And you don't have to carry it anymore. You start replacing it with your own voice. Softer, kinder, stronger. I am worthy. I am enough. I deserve peace. And the more you practice, the more that voice grows. Until one day it drowns out theirs completely. Healing doesn't erase the past. It doesn't undo the scars. But it transforms them. What once felt like a mark of weakness begins to look like proof of survival. You made it out. You are still here. And you are rebuilding, not into who you used to be but into someone wiser, braver, and stronger. The healing is slow. The healing is hard. But the healing is real. And it is yours. There comes a day when you realize the storm has passed. Not because the sky is perfectly clear. Not because everything is easy now, but because, for the first time in what feels like forever, the air doesn't taste like fear. It takes a while to notice it. Healing isn't dramatic. It's subtle, quiet. It sneaks up on you in ordinary moments. Maybe it happens when you wake up one morning and realize you slept through the night. No nightmares, no jolting awake at 3 a.m., no phantom echoes of their voice in your head. Just rest. Just peace. Or maybe it happens when you hear a song you used to love, one they ruined for you, and instead of flinching at the memories, you sing along. Louder, freer, reclaiming it note by note. The new beginning isn't a grand announcement. It's not a line in the sand where you say, "Now I'm healed." No, it's a collection of moments stacked gently, quietly, until one day you look back and realize, I'm no longer the person I was when I left. The new beginning looks like rediscovery. Rediscovering the way your laughter fills a room. Rediscovering the passions they dismissed, the art, the writing, the dancing, the dreaming. Rediscovering friendships, reconnecting with people who always loved you but couldn't reach you through the walls the narcissist built. It looks like making choices without fear. Wearing what you want. Speaking your mind. Saying no, and not apologizing for it. It looks like walking into a room and knowing you don't have to shrink yourself to fit anyone's comfort. And perhaps most importantly, it looks like learning to love again. Not rushing into another relationship, not clinging to someone new for validation, but learning to love yourself. Genuinely. Completely. For so long you believed their lies, that you were too much, too little, too broken. But the truth is you are whole. You always were. They just convinced you otherwise. And as you step into your new beginning, you start to see yourself clearly again. Not as they painted you, but as you truly are, resilient, radiant, worthy. Maybe one day you'll love someone else again. Maybe you'll open your heart and let another person in. But this time it won't be about filling a void. It will be about sharing a life you've already built. A life that is already yours. The new beginning doesn't erase the past. It doesn't pretend the pain never happened. Instead, it honors it. Because every scar, every tear, every battle you fought to get here is proof of your strength. You are not defined by what they did to you. You are defined by what you chose to do after. You chose to leave. You chose to heal. And now you are choosing to begin again. The storm was real. The pain was real. But so is the sunrise. So is the laughter. So is the life waiting for you on the other side. And this new beginning, is yours. If you've made it this far, you know the truth. Surviving a narcissist changes you. It breaks you in ways you didn't know you could break. It bends you until you forget your own shape. It silences you until you wonder if your voice will ever matter again. But here you are, listening, breathing, still standing. And that alone is proof of your strength. Because survival is strength. Healing is strength. Choosing yourself, after everything they tried to take from you, is strength. For so long your story wasn't your own. They rewrote it, twisted it, told you who you were, and convinced you to believe it. But the truth is your story has always belonged to you. And now you're reclaiming it. The survivor's voice doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It speaks softly at first, shaky and uncertain. I deserve better. I am worthy. I'm not what they said I was. And over time that voice grows louder, stronger, clearer. Until one day, it drowns out the echoes of their cruelty completely. Your survivor's voice is the part of you that refused to stay silent. The part that knew, deep down, that love isn't supposed to hurt like that. That control isn't care. That manipulation isn't affection. Your survivor's voice is the part that carried you through the darkness, the part that led you to freedom, the part that whispers even now, keep going. There is more for you than this. And maybe the most powerful truth is this. Your voice doesn't just belong to you anymore. By speaking it, by living it, by surviving, you light the way for others still trapped in silence. Because somewhere, someone is listening. Someone who doesn't yet believe escape is possible. Someone who doubts their own strength. Someone who feels alone. And when they hear your story, your strength, your voice, they will realize, if they can survive, maybe I can too. That is the gift of the survivor's voice. It doesn't just free you. It helps free others. So hold it close. Nurture it. Let it grow. Because you are not just a victim. You are not just a survivor. You are a testament. You are proof. You are living, breathing strength. And the story doesn't end here. The story continues, every time you laugh, every time you dream, every time you choose yourself again and again. The survivor's voice is yours forever. Unbroken. Unstolen. Unstoppable. And so are you.